In God the believer shall trust. In other words, if you're a believer, you must trust that God will take care of you. God guarantees it for you. And if something appears to be bad, you must know there's some good reason for it. 52. Say, you can only expect for us one of two good things in war, victory or martyrdom. Why do we expect for you condemnation from God and retribution from Him at our hand or at our hands? Therefore wait, and we will wait along with you. Say, spend willingly or unwillingly, nothing will be accepted from you, for you are evil people. Rejectors of God's messenger observed the Salat prayers. What prevented the acceptance of their spending is that they disbelieved in God and His messenger, and when they observed the contact prayers, Salat, they observed them lazily, and when they gave to charity, they did so grudgingly. This is an important verse you should remember. It's 954, remember it. When the people tell you that they think that life began with Muhammad, they think there was no Salat before the Prophet Muhammad. You should tell them, remind them of this verse. These are people who rejected the Prophet. They disbelieved in God, but they were doing the 5 contact prayers. The word Salat is very specific, because Salat existed before the Prophet. Just at the time, it had been they had been corrupted by idol worship. Exactly. Same thing today. 954. This is another proof that the contact prayers Salat existed before the Quran.
And they will get a justification that they will say this was one of the last chapters that was revealed.
Yes, this is a good point, because this verse was revealed probably less than a year before the Prophet's death. And this is my chance to give Parivash a public apology Sura, because I misunderstood her question yesterday. She was saying that the verses at the end of Surah 15 about people who accept the Quran partially could not possibly be applicable to the time of the Prophet, because the Quran itself was being revealed. It was not in existence really. Even when the Prophet died, he left the Quran in the chronological sequence with instructions on the side. It was not organized at all into a Quran. Now we have the Quran. This is the Quran, the format that God wants. And it did not exist until 20 years after the Prophet's death. He tried to put it together.
Yeah, excuse me. I thought this only one verse is very, very strong.
Yeah.
Just what is proclaimed. To whom proclaimed the messenger before claimed that I am messenger, and after that, before.
وقل إني أنا النذير المبين. I say I am the.
Just one verse is enough to know that after Muhammad is the messenger coming.
MashaAllah. Yeah, I misunderstood the question. (196) at the top, 55 says, do not be impressed by their money or their children. God turns these into means of retribution for them in this life, and their souls depart while they are disbelievers. This is a common thing that you may come across. Say, hey, look at those people, they are not believers, but they are happy and rich and this and that. But they're not happy. You have to take that word out. Because God says He would cause the money and the children to be the source of misery for them. Then after all this misery, they leave the world as disbelievers. 56. They swear by God that they belong with you while they do not belong with you. They are divisive people. They will create division. They will create confusion, because the statements that come out of their mouth reflect disbelief. If they could find any refuge or caves or a hiding place, they would go to it rushing. Some of them criticize your distribution of the charities. If they are given therefrom, they become satisfied. But if they are not given therefrom, they become objective. They should be satisfied with what God and His messenger have given them. They should have said, God suffices us. God will provide for us from His bounties through His messenger. We are seeking only God. And here's a distribution system for charities other than zakat. It also applies to zakat. Charities shall go to the poor. So in zakat it says your parents first. They have to be poor. If they are not poor, then you go to the next line, which is relatives, cousins, aunts, nephews, nieces, uncles. 60 charities shall go to the poor, the needy, the workers who collect them, the new converts, to free the slaves, to this burden by sudden expenses, in the cause of God, and to the traveling alien. Such is God's commandment. God is omniscient, most wise. Some of them heard the prophet by saying he is all ears. Say, it is better for you that he listens to you. He believes in God and trusts the believers. He is a mercy for those among you who believe. Those who heard God's messenger have incurred a painful retribution. 62. They swear by God to you to please you, when God and His messenger are more worthy of pleasing if they are really believers. Retribution for opposing God and His messenger. 63. Did they not know that anyone who opposes God and His messenger has incurred the fire of hell forever? This is the worst humiliation. The hypocrites worry that the surah may be revealed, exposing what is inside their hearts. Say, go ahead and mock. God will bring out what you are worried about. If you ask them, they would say, we were only joking and playing. Say, do you realize that you are mocking God and His revelations and His messenger? Do not apologize. You have disbelieved after having believed. If we pardon some of you, we will punish others among you as a consequence of their transgressions. The hypocrite men and the hypocrite women belong with each other. They advocate evil and prohibit righteousness, and they are stingy. They forgot God, so He forgot them. The hypocrites are truly wicked. God promises the hypocrite men and the hypocrite women, as well as the disbelievers, the fire of hell. They abide therein forever. It suffices them. God has condemned them. They have incurred an unending retribution. So here we read 12 pages, most of them about the hypocrites, because they sit with us and we look on them as believers, and then they talk to some of us and people listen to them. And what comes out will cause doubt in the heart of the believers. But God reserves the lowest pit of hell for them because of this. They look like believers, act like believers. So we have to be aware as we grow. Just because we're all here in the same room doesn't mean you have to be careful to what we listen. This is a test for all of us.
Because they are more dangerous now.
Exactly. Yes. It could be very, very loving, friendly people, and they're with us, and then they stab you. Yes. In fact, we have many examples of this. There are people who were with us and very strong, who became very close and very friendly, but now we know they are not believers. Because things are happening progressively, and there's a drop-out point for some people. So even though they believe, when the messengership point came, for example, they couldn't take it. But they continue to come with us and come to the meeting. You know a few of those, huh? Okay, we'll have 5 minutes of discussion.
And those like past start with the
Parents.
immediate relatives, parents, and charity is another part.
No, charity is something that's almost past. Earthquake comes and destroys San Francisco, and the people in the street hungry, and you don't even know their names. You help them.
That's what is unlimited.
Right. Of course, it's limited by your means and by not being too extravagant. Go ahead.
If you have a cousin or something like that that's poor and but very disbelieving, arrogant, all that, and then there's an orphan that is believing and needs it even more, you still give it to the cousin, to your other?
Yes, get to the relative first. Unless he's fighting you. If he's just disbelieving, he has made a decision, he doesn't know, but he's not fighting you actively, then you have to give the zakat to the relative first. So God said, yeah. Because your cousin, who is not fighting you, maybe next week he'll read the Quran, discover God, and become better than you and me. Right? And maybe when you help him, this will cause him to believe. Say, wow, this is a good system. Those believers are charitable. So God tells us to consider them potential believers.
Charity begins at home.
That's it.
The people who, like, I think everybody going to get a message.
Inshallah.
But when our duty according to, like, if we know the person get the message and we refuse it, and but we didn't give it to him, but we get it from somebody else, it's still our duty to go again or to not to go.
He got the message from another source?
Yeah, from another believer, but they refuse.
Oh, I see. Well, if the circumstances come up, we're supposed to give the message anyway, when the circumstances come up. God will create the circumstances for us to deliver the message. But we must strive. We need to strive. We need to do something. As it is, the majority of people believe in God alone, worship the Quran alone, worship God alone, and that's it. They're believers. And they're good. They're going to heaven. But they are not the same as people who strive, who are just aflame. Hey, look who's here! The Turners are here! Hey. Come on in, come on in. MashaAllah. You left the Umniya home. Rashad. Alaikum salam. She's asleep here in Tucson? Oh, okay. I know how she is.
Rashad, I have a question. If, for example, my sister asked me for because
Loan.
okay, and she's a very believer and I trust her. But if I commit sin if I don't have a
written down? If in your mind you don't care if she keeps the money and you never get it back, then it's okay. But if you want it to be repaid, God tells us to write it down so you don't forget how much you gave her and she doesn't forget how much you borrowed.
But if she doesn't care,
but if you don't care, if she ever pays it, then it's okay. This you write it down if you expect it to be paid back, because I'm telling you, you'll forget. You may give her $500 and then after a month you'll be absolutely positive that you give her 1,000. sometimes Satan will see to it.
Yeah, and the duty of the person who gives the loan to write it down, or both?
Well, the person who's giving the loan is in control. So it is the person, right? But the person who's taking the loan is the one who dictates the terms, who writes down the receipt. I received $500 from Roxana, and I promised to pay it at $50 a month starting in February, and finish the payment at certain date. So this is, when God gives us the details as to what to write, because it's be written in the hand of the borrower, and then you have two witnesses. This way there'll be no confusion at all. SubhanAllah. When this came down in an age where there were no accountants.
This 958, that some of them criticize your distribution of charities, but when they receive themselves, they become satisfied. This we have seen in Sweden, people who object to the taxes, but then they try to get out as much as possible from the public sector, so the taxes just go up and up and up.
Yeah, this is true in all countries, it seems. Here also. No, but this is a specific situation talking about the community of believers. And we've seen it also within the community of believers. We are living the Quran. So what is your first question, Naim?
How much you talked about the message?
As much as you can. Yeah, we were talking about believers who believe in God, the hereafter, follow the Quran alone and worship God alone, but that's the extent of it. They're good people, they're going to heaven, but they're not at the same rank as far as God is concerned, like the people who strive.
But when it starts to be like angry, it's fun too.
Right. Yeah, right. You have to see your own circumstances and how it is working. But the God says, لا يستوي المجاهدون بأموالهم وأنفسهم والقاعدون. فضل الله المجاهدين بأموالهم وأنفسهم على القاعدين درجة. God raises strivers. So I don't push. I let it. Comes from the people themselves.
But if this starts to really question you, here you are in the meeting and they're questioning you, oh, this is the moment to talk about it, and then you get angry.
Yeah.
Then forget about this.
Yeah, you want to see to it that the message is delivered in the best possible and the most effective manner. This all depends on the circumstances. Again, ادعو لسبيل ربك بالحكمة والموعظة الحسنة. Invite to the path of God with wisdom and great diplomacy. You want to do it so you don't chase them away, and you don't keep the door open. If they are not going to believe now, you keep the door open for them.
Oh yeah, because I haven't done that.
So you're right. Yeah.
Like you said, I'm going to
MashaAllah.
The last letter
Was it good?
was very
Good. Alhamdulillah.
When you give the message of white wine to somebody different way, and he always fights it, so it is normal you say no that. When they ask
Yes.
a favor or ask us something, we should say, this favor.
Forget it. Yeah.
It
Yeah.
happened to a gentleman who do business with him, and I sent him all the documentation, and he fights it.
Yeah.
And he asked me to sponsor him doing the Arabic.
Nope.
And I'm sorry, I cannot do that.
Very good. Yeah. But there is a point of where God asks us to give up on them. There's a question in Surah 13 says, is it not time for the believers to give up on the disbelievers and realize that God guides whomever He will? Usually they catch it like that, Rajat, don't they? If somebody's going to believe, they catch it, they see it. You can tell if they're blind and deaf, or if there is this concrete wall around them, or if they're wide open to the message. I don't know, I think it's been rare to see somebody who is completely blocked and then all of a sudden they could see. Well, Lisa and Susan, go to work. You can go through this story. I think Parivash finished cooking, so you can have some breakfast. You want to go help them? Yeah. Show them what they have for breakfast. There's some rice. You want to bring the cake now? I'm not. I know. When? Now? Yeah? Good time. Okay, wait. Stay where you are. Stay. Just 1 minute. Lisa and Susan have to go to work soon, so just wait a minute.
And the community group
Hurry up. Is it the same tape?
Yeah,
Is it going over and over?
No, it's another more tape.
أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم. Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. As Rashad said, we're starting with verse 75. Those that didn't just come in. In Surah 56, verse 75. The Honorable Quran. I swear that by the positions of the stars, and it is an awesome oath if you only knew. I'd like to stop there for just a second, because we could talk about that all night. We know now, though it was not known 1400 years ago, how awesome an oath this truly is. 1400 years ago, they could see the stars and looking up in the sky be awed by them as we are today. But for us, having the knowledge that we have, we know that what you can see in the night sky is just the minutest fraction of the stars there. I'd like to read just a little bit of a passage talking about how big our galaxy and the universe really is. I don't want to go too far with it, but just to give us a little bit of a feel again of how awesome an oath this truly is, because it is a more awesome oath than we can really comprehend, even though intellectually we can try. It's beyond our comprehension. Our sun is only one of perhaps a million stars within our galaxy, the Milky Way. The size of the Milky Way is awesome. It would take us 100,000 years at the speed of light to cross it from one end to the other. Bearing in mind that the sun's light travels 93 million miles in 4 minutes. We can appreciate the vastness of the Milky Way. It's 100,000 light years across. From the outer limit of our galaxy, how significant is the planet Earth of the solar system? Our next door neighbor galaxy, the closest galaxy to our Milky Way, is 2 million light years away. These are all established scientific facts that a civilized and highly educated generation is fortunate to know. If we go to the center of our neighbor galaxy, can you visualize the planet Earth of the Milky Way galaxy? How significant is it at that distance? By moving away from our galaxy to the nearest galaxy close to us, we are already talking about incredible distances, millions of light years. Yet our universe contains a great number of galaxies. Back in the 1950s, Shane and Wharton drew the first map of the universe and its galaxies, 1,000 galaxies were surveyed then. And since then, scientists have discovered 1 billion galaxies, more than 1 million times what was known 30 years ago. Can you imagine the vastness of our universe with its billion galaxies and billion trillion stars? We are now talking about billions of light years within our universe. Have you lost track of our planet Earth? How significant is our planet Earth? It is very important to keep this size and our significance, or perspective, in order to appreciate the significance or insignificance of teeny creatures who inhabited this planet for a brief period of time. And then we have one of the Psalms. This is from Psalm 8. When I behold your heavens, the work of your fingers, the moon and stars which you set in place, what is man that you should be mindful of him, or the Son of Man that you should care for him? And yet we get up in the morning and we think, we're so important. This is truly an awesome oath. And God is swearing, I swear by the position of the stars, and it is an awesome oath if you only knew. This is an honorable Quran in a perfectly preserved book. None can touch it except the righteous. It is a revelation from the Lord of the universe. We have in our hand the only thing that we need. God has blessed us with this incredible blessing. This is our roadmap back to God. And we know that it is an honorable Quran, and it has been perfectly preserved. We in this mosque know that better than any people on earth. We've been incredibly blessed, incredibly blessed. The miracles continue to come, flooding us, absolutely flooding us, showing with no uncertainty, in no uncertain terms, that this book is perfectly preserved, and that not only is it perfectly preserved, but it is so incredibly coded that there is no way that any human being could have even approached to the slightest degree approached writing even one surah. It's beyond awesome, truly, for me. And we know now also that none can touch it except the righteous. What does that mean? I mean, that doesn't mean physically touch it, but it means that no one can get from this Quran unless they are righteous, unless they are truly seeking God. And beyond that, and more importantly for us at this point, we know that no one could discover this miracle without being righteous. There is no way. This miracle is as awesome as anything we can imagine. God has already sworn by the position of the stars that this Quran is honorable and it is perfectly preserved. And that it's overwhelming. It's absolutely overwhelming. So we know, first of all, we know that this Quran has been preserved, but we also are given very clearly, the strongest of proofs that the discoverer of this code is indeed righteous, which is something that, of course, we will all hear otherwise, because that's the way Satan works. That's the way we all get entrapped. But we know very clearly that the miracle and the revelation itself had to have come from God. There is no way. There's no way we could have made it up, or could have been tricked from God. That anyone could have tricked God to discover the miracle any more than they could have tricked God to be the prophet to whom the revelation is given. Verse 81. Are you then evading this message? Do you make it your share that you reject it? Your soul will reach your throat someday. Then you will look around. We are closer to you, to it, your throat, than you are, but you cannot see. If you do have any power, you should reclaim your soul if you are truthful. Look at how many people are fighting this miracle. These verses, to me, are specifically directed to them, as well as, obviously, to those who rejected the Quran. Are you evading this message? God has already said that the Quran is perfectly preserved, that none can touch it except the righteous, and yet there are those who say that they are Muslim, who say that they have studied the Quran, and yet they reject the numerical code. And they do it out of ego because they don't like what it leads to, which is worshiping God alone, and leaving all of the tradition, all of the falsehood, all of the garbage, and coming back to the very simple truth. It is very simple. It's not easy until you make it easy, until you allow it to be easy. It's very simple, and it's very straightforward and clear-cut. Those who are evading this message, and that's truly what it is. I mean, anyone who reads this Quran has to evade it or follow it. If you follow it, there's no way you can follow the Hadith and Sunnah. There's no way you can accept all of the other garbage if you were following the Quran. So if you're reading it and you're still following the Hadith and Sunnah, you are evading the Quran. Do you make it your share that you reject it? Well, it takes a lot of work, I think, on some level, not to accept the truth. You have to work at rejecting the truth, and I think that when you tend to do that, or when you do that, then you become a fanatic about it. And I think that's a lot of what we're seeing. And it's very clear from the next verses that none of us control our lives. None of us can stop death when it comes. God is closer to us than our jugular vein. He stands between us and our hearts. We know that God is in control of the minutest detail in the universe. He controls every atom, every subatomic particle within our body, within the rest of the universe. That power is so awesome and so incomprehensible to us that it's probably easier for most people to ignore it because it's too scary to realize that there is a power that is that great. And yet, we're here to come back to that realization. We're here because we did not remember that when we were in God's presence on the heavenly planes. And we're here again, as Lori so beautifully expressed. We're here again to try and come back with a second chance. Can I stop here? Are there any questions or comments? Looks like
This word, Arabic word, touch.
Oh, I'm sorry, I don't know when the Arabic has a double meaning. I'm not sure.
Oh, just read the footnote.
I'm sorry. Thank you. Excuse me. The footnote. The Quran is by no means a regular book. Only the sincere seekers of the truth will be allowed to understand it. See 4144. The insincere will be prevented from acquiring any knowledge from the Quran. In fact, those who are prevented by God from learning the Quran claim that this verse means that no one can physically touch the Quran unless he satisfies certain ablution requirements. Obviously, this distortion is a clever satanic plot to prevent people from studying God's message to them. Our salvation is in reading, studying, and heeding the Quran.
is not really touch. The English word, the Arabic word does not mean touch in English. I will have to find another word. But still in English, you can say that means that nobody can derive anything out of the Quran unless that's sincere. But Arabic, the word is yamas. It is different from yalmas. Yalmas is the physical touch. Yamas is touch in this meaning that we cannot derive, understand anything from it unless that's sincere. Because your teacher is God. When you read this book, you're directly being taught by God. As we read in Surah 55, not a regular book. This is why you read it over and over 1,000 times, and you still find new things every time. Unlike a novel, you read a novel and that's it, you throw it away, you don't want to see it again. So, because every time you look at it, God gives you new information. This is, in verse 77, the Quran in Arabic is described as Kareem. In other places, it's called Quran Azim. And in Surah 50, it's described as Quran Majid, glorious, Azim, great, Kareem, honorable. So all these are actually attributes of God Himself. And this is awesome, to describe the Quran with the same names of God. Azim, Majid, Kareem. It tells you how great this book is. Your salvation is in this book. And we're really fortunate to be studying it every week. Having the Quran studied. Hopefully you're reading it every day, at least one verse every day. Make it a duty upon yourself. Because it's a tremendous blessing. None can touch it except the righteous. And we have an international observation to prove this in the miracle of Quran that is coming out of this mosque, that it is a miracle that is like the Quran, ranges from the very simple to the very complex, yet nobody was allowed to make any discovery in this miracle except those who are connected with us, connected with believers, only believers who believe like we do. They believe in worshiping God alone and upholding the word of God alone. Just look at the people who made discoveries. I want to pass this around. Let's do it very fast. Just take one and pass it on to the next one. This is a summary of the miracle in one page. And when you look on the back, under other features of the miracle, you see that the first verse is 19 letters. The number of surahs is 114, 19 times 6. Is this simple enough? The first verse is 19 letters, the number of surahs is a multiple of 19. Very simple. The first revelation was 19 words, the last revelation 19 words. These are famous first revelation and famous last revelation. And these are very simple, they don't require a computer, but not a single person outside the fold of believers was allowed to touch it. It's a monopoly. You look at the people who made the major discoveries, Abdullah, Mahmoud, Ihsan, Lisa, many others, Firuz, Ismail. These are the people that we know. And they're all Gatut. All the people, they're all people who firmly believe like we do. And for a long time I was surprised, why doesn't anybody else find these things, you know? It's because I needed some support. It's very simple. When you look at the back, you see how simple it is. From the missing Bismillah to the extra Bismillah 19 surahs. Is this difficult? I mean, the consistency and the repetition of the number 19 is so simple. Yet, nobody, there are 1 billion Muslims in the world, but none of them was allowed to find these very simple facts unless they adhere to the Quran alone. If they believed in Hadith and Sunnah and they mentioned other names in their prayer, they are not permitted to touch it. This is verse 77. By the way, on the front you see a very complex miracle. In the circle, this was, it's no longer the biggest number in the world because this is already obsolete. Abdullah on his birthday yesterday made it obsolete. In this circle, the number begins with the first verse in the Quran, 1. So if you look on the left, there's an asterisk on the left side of the circle. And you see, right, we start by 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. These are the verses of the first surah. 7 verses. Followed by the total number of verses in the surah, which is 7. And then you move on to the next surah, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, all the way to 286, the number of verses in surah 2. Then you put the total number of verses in surah 2, 286. And you do this all the way to the end of the Quran. When you get to the end of the Quran, if you look on the right side, you see this big arrow that says total number of verses in the Quran. You put that. Now you have a very long number that is, I like it in the metric system, it's 1 kilometer long. And it consists of 12,696 digits. And it is a multiple of 19. If you go on, if you see now, look on the right side of the circle, in the middle of it, with the big arrow that says total number of verses in the Quran. After the asterisk comes the total number of verses in the first surah, which is 7. And next to it, the 7 verses, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Then you put the total number of verses in surah number 2, and so on. So what we're doing in the lower half is we are reversing the position of the total number of verses. Instead of putting it at the end of every surah, we're putting it at the beginning of every surah. And brothers and sisters, the number is divisible when you go to the end. So now, this is a circle. When you connect the two numbers, you have what was, until yesterday, the day before yesterday, the longest number in the world, 25,388 digits. And that's a multiple of 19. Now, what Abdullah did to make this number obsolete, he added the number of every surah. Okay, let's go now to the asterisk on the left side of the circle. It begins with the numbers of the verses of the first surah, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Followed by the total number of verses in this surah, which is 7. Now between the two sevens there, he put the number of the surah, 1. And he did this with every surah, and you guessed it, the number is still divisible. It's just incredible. And there is more. If you put the number of the surah at the beginning, or at the end, or in the middle, it's still divisible. So this would be, in the Ramadan issue, from the Muslim perspective, you're going to get more details. So now, I don't know how many digits there are from the first surah to the last surah. The numbers, 1, 2, 3, 4, you count the digits? 1, 1, 4. And the surah 1, surah 2, surah 3, surah 4, all the way to surah 1, 1, 4. You know how many digits? 474, you add that?
If you put 1 and 2 and 3, up to 114, it's divisible. It's not like
Yeah, because you put it next to each other, you're not adding. You're just putting them. Okay, there's a by the way miracle. You know, 1, 2, 3, 4. All the way to the end of the Quran, 1, 1, 4. And you put the digits next to each other. 474 digits, and it's a multiple of 19. So you put that, you add this to this number, which is 25,696. You add 474. Now you have the biggest number in the world. And if it's out of this Quran, 2, 4, 25, 388 plus 4, 7. So it's about 25,800 numbers, digits.
So even if you put the
And that is divisible.
put the surah at the beginning or at the end or in the middle, you still
In the middle, meaning between the last verse and the total number of verses. If you look on the left side of the circle, you see the asterisk, and above it you see the number of verses in Surah Al-Fatiha number 1, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, followed by the total number of verses in the Surah, which is another 7. So if you put the one between the two sevens that you see there, that's the number of the Surah.
Yes.
And you do this in all the surahs, it's divisible. If you move the number of the surah, put it at the beginning. So you have 1, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 7. That's divisible. And if you put the total number of verses at the beginning, so you have 1, 7, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, you still have a divisible number. So it sounds like almost a physical impossibility, but it locks every verse. Somebody called today and said, how do you know it's only the 2 verses in Surah 9? You notice that Surah 9 is mentioned here. If you look at the upper right corner of the circle, it says total number of verses in Surah 9. You have to use 127. This fellow was calling from Louisville, Kentucky, and he said, how do you know it's only the 2 verses of Surah 9 that violate the code? So I told him, because every single verse, what we see here is every single verse in the Quran is authenticated as divine from God. Every single one, except these 2. So it's just it is fitting to mention why God swears by the position of the stars that this is a Quran Kareem. By the way, Al-Quran Al-Kareem has a numerical value that's 684 among 19. The numerical value of this, the official name of the Quran, Al-Quran Al-Kareem. Just to change the subject, make it a little bit lighter. Do you know how they count the stars? I'm sure some of you do, but anyway, they go out in the night and take a picture of the sky. Just take a picture, they put it in the computer, and they count. The computer will count the number of the stars in that area, in that picture, and there's a formula that tells you what the circumference from the inside of a circle is, and then you can tell from this picture how many are in the whole circumference of the whole sky. And you do this 100 times, and then you take the average of the 100 times, and you have exactly, almost exactly, the number of stars, 1 billion trillion of them. And these are the ones that we see. Because if our sun is in the next galaxy, we will not be able to see it, because it is one of the dim stars. What we're seeing are only the bright stars. This is how we counted them. I swear by the positions of the stars, because they are in perfect position, in perfect orbits. They don't crash into one another. There was something else also I wanted to mention here. I think this is it. Are there any questions? Yes.
The pieces are not going
Right. Yeah, we have 2 halves that are divisible by 19. So what I'm doing here is just linking them into a circle. One, the upper half is a multiple 19, and you have the total number of verses at the end of each surah. The lower half is a multiple 19, and connecting them has nothing to do with anything. But in the lower half, you have the number of verses at the beginning of every surah. If you look on the right side of the circle, look at the right side of the circle at the big arrow that says total number of verses in the Quran. Below that, you see Surah Al-Fatiha with the total number of verses, which is 7 at the beginning, not at the end. So you have 7, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. And instead of 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 7. Both of them are independently divisible by 19. And I just put them next to each other. And it's because the upper half was discovered by Feroz Karmani in Canada. And he ended up putting the total number of verses in the Quran at the end of the number. The lower half is Abdullah's discovery, and the total number of verses comes ahead of the surah. So the total number of verses in the Quran fits right there ahead of the whole Quran. So I put it in a circle. This circle is now obsolete. Great, but obsolete. We have better circles now. Yeah. Any other questions? Okay, back to Lisa and verse number what?
Verse number 88. Thereafter, if he is one close to me, then happiness, flowers, and gardens of bliss. And if he belongs with those on the right, then peace to you from those on the right. But if he is one of the rejectors, the strayers, then the abode of retribution and burning hell. This is the inevitable truth. You shall glorify the name of your Lord, the great. Verse 88 and 89, actually all of these verses refer back to the beginning verses of this Quran, of this surah, where it talks about the high heaven, the lower heaven, and hell. And we see again in 88 how beautiful the highest heaven is. We know, of course, that these are all allegorical descriptions, that God uses allegory because there's no way that we, in our present states, can even begin to understand really what is in store for us. But we know from the allegory of the highest heaven that it is truly bliss, and that it is wonderful beyond our dreams. God says that anything we wish for, anything those who are in the highest heaven, inshallah, will be there. Anything they wish for, and even more. So God's grace is even greater than anything we can comprehend or desire, wish for. And then those on the right, those in the lower heaven, for them also, it's incredibly beautiful. And it's peace. Peace to you from those on the right. An incredible triumph to be among those on the right. But if he is one of the rejectors, the strayers, then the retribution in burning hell. We know, again, that we can't comprehend really the awfulness of hell. We have a slight idea because we are as far from God as anything in the universe at this point. And we know how hellish this world is and how awful it is, particularly when you step out of God's kingdom. We're incredibly blessed to be in God's kingdom, inshallah. But as soon as you step out, you know what an incredible hell that is. And that is nothing compared to the ultimate hell. This is the inevitable truth. You shall glorify the name of your Lord, the great. MashaAllah.